I have often said that leadership is a thankless contact sport. Now, it might not be all that, but I do believe that there are some essential elements that go into leading that a lot of people miss. And I always want to showcase people who I've identified in the online space and within the military who I think really exemplify strong leadership. And one of those is our returning guest, Neil Jurd. Neil, how are you doing today?
Hi, Teresa. Well, it's lovely to be back.
Well, it's lovely to have you back. And this is a special morning show because Neil lives in England. Where in Great Britain do you live?
I live in Cumbria, near the border with Scotland.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we met while I was over there. I did not meet in person, but met online. And it's wonderful to talk to you again and to catch up after all this time and to just talk about some basic concepts that I think a lot of people, like I said, miss when it comes to leadership. But before we get started, as I always say, welcome to the Stories of Service podcast, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. I am the host of Stories of Service, and to get us started is our intro from my father, Charlie Pickard.
From the moment we're born and lock eyes with our parents, we are inspiring others. By showing up as a vessel of service, we not only help others, we help ourselves. Welcome to S.O.S, Stories of Service, hosted by Teresa Carpenter, here from ordinary people from all walks of life who have transformed their communities by performing extraordinary work.
And today we are going to have a powerful conversation on leadership, service, and the evolving needs of those who guide others, both in uniform and beyond. A former British Army officer and Royal Military Academy Sandhurst instructor, Neil is the founder of the Leader Connect platform and author of the acclaimed book, The Leadership Book. His mission, to make leadership accessible, values-driven, and transformative across all sectors. And today we're going to talk about the mindset of a true servant leader, how the best leadership is grounded in simplicity and human connection, his vision for reshaping leadership education through Leader Connect, why rank doesn't always equal leadership and what really does, and his commitment to equipping individuals at every level to lead with integrity, vision, and compassion. Welcome again, Neil.
Hi, Teresa. I was just thinking, it's lovely that your dad introduces this. I wouldn't trust my dad to introduce me.
Well, my dad did have a very long career in broadcasting, so I think that's probably what helps. So when I went into the podcast space, I really couldn't think of anybody better to do my intro than my father. And he was actually my first guest on S.O.S. He was an in-person guest when I went back and visited my family, I think in 2021. And so it's just been really special to me to have him as the person who kicks it off. And I think that's a legacy that he'll have for years to come as I do this show. But I always ask guests, first off, those who join the military, where were you originally from and why did you join the Army?
I'm from London, and I went to school in South London, and I'm sure I told you this last time, because it's such a thing. I never wanted to do anything else. Like lots of kids want to be soldiers, or certainly lots of kids used to want to be soldiers, but I could never think of anything else I wanted to do. So that never changed. I became an Army cadet, which is a sort of like Scouts. It's a part-time youth organisation where you learn some military skills, and I did that. And then I got a scholarship to Sandhurst, which is our Royal Military Academy, and I went in, and there was nothing else. The only other thing that appealed at all was writing, and obviously I've kind of returned to writing now. So I did it in a linear way. But yeah, I had nothing else. When people say thank you for your service, I always think, yeah, but it was it was what I wanted to do.
Right, right. What do you think that came from? Was there somebody in your family who inspired you to join the military?
No, my mum was horrified by the idea. My dad had done national service, like conscription that went on after World War II. He was in the last intake who did national service in the early 60s, and he absolutely hated it. He couldn't believe I was going to do it for a job.
And you spent a lot of years in the military. In fact, you retired from the Army. Am I correct?
Yeah, I was regular army for 17 years, I think, and then I was a reservist for maybe another 5. And then I had a role in the Army Cadet Force as the head of officer training up until the end of last year.
You remind me so much of Oak McCullough. I asked Oak to get in touch with you. I think
Yeah,
he
he
was
did.
going to. Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yeah.
I didn't ask about you. I didn't ask about that offline. So I guess we're talking about it online. But man, every time I hear your journey, it's so similar to Oak's.
Is it?
Yes, he did the same thing. He retired I think you retired as an 05 as well, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so did he. And then he finished out his last tour as and I can't remember, but some sort of a cadet academy. And so it was the same, very same, similar path. And then also decided to go into the thought leader space. And he had a speaking engagement in England the last time we talked. And I said, "Oh, you've got to get in touch with Neil. You just remind me so much of him." So
Yeah.
I'm glad he reached out to
Yeah,
you.
we spoke about a month ago. We had a really great chat.
Yeah, yeah. Just very much reminds me of you, and a lot of the leadership principles that you had in your book, he talks about in his book as well. So
Yes.
there's just so many parallels there. So tell me a little bit about why you made that transition from military to the leadership space. What did you see missing? Or what did you see that you could bring to that space? Because as we know, just like the podcast space, totally oversaturated. Lots of people are in it. What did you think you could uniquely bring to it?
I went into it gently. I left the army and I was the head of logistics at British Sugar, and then through personal tragedy, I lost my wife, and I had very young children, so I had to stop working so I could look after the girls. But friends invited me to do some one-to-one leadership work with senior leaders in their organizations, and I realized that people didn't have a clue about leadership. They had no idea. People know how to manage, and they know how to be busy, and they carry all of the stress,
Yeah.
but without any of the skills to actually get stuff done. And I probably coached. Well, actually, the first person I coached, I realized this. And she was lovely, but she knew nothing about leadership. And that's a theme that I've just seen more and more. Most people in senior jobs are there almost by accident, or because they're good at the professional side of what they do. They're good at, they're a good accountant, or they're a good engineer or whatever, but they've got no idea about people, and they find it really stressful leading people. And I just think, my take is it's really easy. It's really obvious. It's you just know what you're trying to achieve and be good and take the time to connect with people. So it's easy to teach. So I just felt it was crying out to be done.
Right.
To be taught well.
And I think sometimes, unfortunately, in a lot of our organizations, and this isn't just, I think, exclusive to the military, but we tend to promote not based on leadership skills or good skills working with people. We promote either, like you said, based on tactical prowess, or we promote based on, have you met the wickets to do whatever your boss wanted you to do? Like, know your boss and then just please them. It doesn't matter if you can lead or not. And I think we've all been working in an environment where we knew that that's what the case was. The person was not qualified to lead and had no business being in charge, but because they understood how to manipulate the people who they were working for to think that they could do no wrong, unfortunately, they got into those positions.
Yeah, I mean, the military is, especially in peacetime, it's a bureaucracy. And there's a huge amount of power in your first reporting officer, your one-up reporting officer, and it would take a very perceptive two-up reporting officer to spot if the one-up had you. I know you'll understand the terminology, but hopefully other people will.
We're talking about our supervisor, and then your supervisor's supervisor, or the person that's two stages above them. If they're perceptive enough, or if they're able to slow down enough. I think
Mm.
sometimes that's the problem, is that we're so task saturated that the people side of leading gets shoved to the wayside. And like you said, Neil, I think in a peacetime environment, we can get away with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of perception management. I mean, I think the system, broadly speaking, in knowing people from my peer group who stayed in and did well, broadly speaking, they were very good, but with a few outliers who just knew how to look good. You know,
Right.
do you know about the it was a West Point, well, it wasn't a West Point study, but it was a study of the West Point yearbook. It was an academic piece of work where they looked at, I think it was in the mid-50s, but they did the work in the 80s, and they looked at the West Point yearbook from something like 1956 or something, and tried to predict career trajectory based on physical appearance, and it works. There was a remarkable, look it up, it's brilliant. There's a remarkable correlation.
I'm going to.
It's a version of the halo effect, where good looking tall people have a disproportionate tendency to do well, and the people that had the kind of the chiseled stereotypical infantry army officer appearance were more likely to go high.
Well,
And they could tell that, you see, because they did it in the 80s. They could look at the yearbook, grade potential based on physical appearance, and then look at what had actually happened to their careers.
well, I think too, like I've thought about this myself. Like when you look at a man, let's say, that's very, very short, or somebody who has red hair, those are just outliers. Those are people that just are going to just, I think, inherently have a tougher time. And so when you've got somebody who meets those attributes of a certain particular physical appearance, I would argue that doors are open for people who are in those positions in a way that the doors just don't open for everybody else. And I mean, that's just the way life works. And
Another similar one is in the United States, presidential elections are disproportionately won by the taller candidate.
it's very, very interesting. Yeah. And I mean, and I think that these are those unconscious biases that people have. And I don't even know how much of it is unconscious. I think we all know that these things exist. And I think that it's important to work in the and thrive in the environment that you've been given, and not try to fool yourself into thinking that this is not the environment that we play in. And tell me a little bit about when you encounter people who, let's say, have struggled and they've made it pretty far in their career, even with some leadership attributes that were less than desired. What are some of the things that you do to help improve them and put them back on track? What are some of the things that you tell them that could help?
It depends what we're doing, but if we're so I do, I guess, two different types of work, plus the online stuff. But with coaching, which is really effective with senior leaders, a big part of it is just creating the space for them to, well, actually it's explaining leadership. And I should say, I mean, I know you've seen it, but
yes,
but that's how I explain leadership.
I'm going to put you on full screen just to show the book real quick. Yep.
But the leadership book, in it, I've captured leadership in really simple, straightforward language. So explaining those concepts to people is really effective, because they won't know stuff that to you will seem really obvious. They won't understand that leadership's about increasing your impact. It's not about being busy, it's about increasing your impact, and that you do it by building connections with people. And again, obvious, but people don't do it. So just explaining the basic theory makes a big difference. And then in coaching sessions, we are creating time for them to think. And as I say in something, I think in the TED talk I did last year, I talk about busy organizations where the leaders are really busy, and nobody's thinking are mindless, literally mindless, if nobody's stopping to think. So a good session, and sometimes I'll spend 3 hours in one go with someone, with a few coffee breaks along the way, just shuts all the noise out and makes them focus on what's actually going on and then what they're trying to achieve, which are two fundamental things. If you don't know what's going on, then what you're doing could be irrelevant. And if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then what the people that work for you and what you're doing could be, well, at the very least, it would be really diluted. There'd be effort going all over the place. So that works really well in coaching. And then the other thing we do is run leadership courses. And I think I do that a lot more. I mean, it's a few years since we had our last chat, isn't it? Like 3 years, maybe?
Yeah, you were starting Leadership Connect, I think around the time that, and I'm going to share the screen so people can see the website to that. But that was around the time that I think we first got acquainted, and you started the training courses. So this is, I don't know if you can, oh, that's your website. Let's go to this one. Can you see it, the Leadership Connect site?
No, that's my website.
Okay, let me see if I can share. Oh, I see. Yeah, it's right there. Let's see here. Give me 1 minute.
It's good though. It means I can see some of the changes I need to make.
All right, so here we go. I'm on the Leadership Connect right here, and this is your kind of an online courses. So tell us a little bit about how you developed this.
Well, when I wrote the book, actually, what I did first was write the scripts of 30 videos explaining all the things that I thought leaders needed to know, and they're probably about 8 minutes long each video. Some are slightly longer, and I explain stuff again. You'd recognize some of it, Teresa. So there's one on the military estimate. I explain the estimate as a problem-solving tool. I talk about servant leadership, serve to lead, the Sandhurst motto, and stuff like that. So I wrote these videos, which I then repurposed as the book, and it worked really well because I'd done the videos in really, like, if you're writing to do something to camera, it makes you quite efficient with your language, doesn't it?
It does,
because waffle stands out a mile in a script. So I made those videos, and then more recently we put the videos together as courses. So you can do a course in leadership, or you can do a course in planning, and I've brought other speakers in. So I've got mindfulness in there. There's courses on coaching and so on. But that's the online course. We also do physical courses, and you could see some pictures of them. They just flashed up on when you were showing the site, and they're experiential. So we make people. That's it. The people stood on the chessboard or making some complex construction. That's actually like a roller coaster project. But we create these really intense experiences with hierarchy and sort of stovepipes in the organization, and friction and limited resources and time pressure. So everything you get in real life, we create on these courses, and it's really effective because we teach them the basic theory, then we put them into this situation for sometimes up to 3 hours, and then afterwards they talk about what happened. But what we get them to do is talk about how they behaved, how they felt, what impact they had on others because of how they were behaving and feeling. And we try and move them away from the specifics of the task. I say the task doesn't matter now. You're never going to do that again. How did you lead? Or how did you follow? What was your role? And we run these for some big organizations now. A couple I can't mention because of NDAs, but Sanofi Pharmaceuticals, a couple of universities over here. So we run quite a lot of these, and I love it, actually. I really, really love this way of training. I hate classrooms. I hate PowerPoint.
Me too. I wish that during my joint professional military education, they brought you in, instead of just, unfortunately mine was during COVID. So I had that added thing of everything I did was through the internet. I had wonderful instructors, don't get me wrong, but I think I would have benefited more from something like this.
Oh, it's I wish I had. I mean, I've in some ways I'm always inventing the course I wish I'd been on, not the course I had been on.
Right, right.
I've seen a lot of PowerPoint in my time. I mean, you know, staff college involved a lot of PowerPoint. And I hate it. I think it's the worst way to learn. It's the easiest way to prove that you've taught something, but the actual effect on the learner is really minimal. The fact you've seen a slide on something doesn't mean you can do it. That's why you get toxic leaders with MBAs.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way we go about making decisions in the military, sadly, is not very effective. When one person sits at the head of a table and everybody just feeds that one person with just back-to-back busy slides until everybody's tuned out except for maybe the top people in the room, and the meeting drags on for over an hour. I mean, that is the day-to-day life of a staff officer. And then when you get to the 05, 06 ranks, especially 06, you run a team, but then your team is really running the office. And you, on the other hand, are spending your entire day in meetings. And this is what you say about the bureaucracy, that this would never fly in a combat zone or in a combat situation. But because we're in peacetime, it substitutes as work. And it's definitely culturally why I started to feel disillusioned, and I think a lot of the 05s get to this point where we're like, this is what it really is. You know, we're working so hard at the tactical level, and we're making all the wickets, and we're motivated, and we're happy. And then we get to like 05, 06, and we're like, what? Sit in a meeting all day? You just go from one meeting to the other. Meanwhile, your deputy just runs the show and does everything behind the scenes. I mean, it's just, it was really insightful when I peeled back the layers of the onion and I saw what really goes on at the staff level. And I was disappointed. I didn't want it to be that way.
Yeah, I know. But it's, people get busy. The other thing I've seen, I mean, bear in mind, I've been out of. Did you lose me or something?
Oh, no. I was just putting in my earphones to hear a little better. I've lost my thread there. That people just do stuff. They do hobby activity, and you get it. You get it in all organisations. And I'm not really thinking of the military particularly, but you do get it in the military, where people will have activity that doesn't contribute at all to what the organisation's there for, but it does contribute to their career. So they'll become, you know, in universities, they'll become the national rep for something on some committee where they get to speak on a stage, and you know it's good for their profile. But they're never there. They're never in their day job because they're always off somewhere doing this thing that they chair or that they're a member of the committee of. And trying to think what the army or navy equivalent of it is, but it's, you know, it's the leader who's never there, but they've got a great profile. Well, it's, I think, the speaking engagements. So as a senior leader, you're inundated with offers to go speak, and some people do it a lot and some people don't do it at all. But I think there's this pressure when you see your other fellow flag officers doing all these speaking engagements. You need to do the same thing and show up and be visible. But what I found is that a lot of times these senior leaders, they aren't even active in writing their own speeches. And they're just reading off something some staff officer wrote. And I remember thinking, like, that's not the way it ought to be. Like,
how can you be passionate about someone else's words?
Right. And I get like somebody helping you craft those words and giving you feedback, but the stories should be your stories, and they should be your heartfelt comments, not, oh, I've just got to show up to this exercise grand opening and read a bunch of remarks that could have been written any time, any day on any exercise. And that was what really, I think, disappointed me, was that I wanted to see our leaders as storytellers of their own stories and their own authentic experiences. And so I think that when you do that, you build credibility as a leader. Would you agree?
Yeah, it needs to be a bit brave, doesn't it? Like if you're going to speak, if you've got an audience of 100 or 500 or maybe a few thousand online, you need to be pushing things a bit. You need to be saying stuff that's not obvious. You're not just, despite what I said about the West Point study, you're not paid for your good looks. You're not just paid to be there. That's the lowest level of senior leadership. Is, oh, they want to see me. So yeah, they do, but they want to see you
No,
because of what you've got or what
you
you're giving.
represent.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and I bet you now. I remember last time we spoke, you were writing some of those speeches.
I was,
Yeah,
and
but
and being a
I
little
bet you now.
frustrated.
But I bet you've been replaced by ChatGPT now. I bet there's an awful lot of write me a speech. I'm a 1-star officer. Write me a speech, ChatGPT, for opening a trading academy, and it would be
Sadly,
really
that
well.
is the case. That is exactly what has happened, and I saw that coming into fruition as I was leaving NATO. Is that everything was just getting replaced by ChatGPT, which, if for certain structure issues, I get it. I mean, I use it to help write my social media posts and things like that, but it's always my initial words and my thoughts. I see no issues with using AI as a tool to help. I do see using AI as your go-to actually just draft the whole thing. Well, then it's not even your words. And again, it goes back to storytelling. I don't really care about who you think or how great the exercise is or all. Like, I want to know why this exercise actually meant something to you. Did you attend it 3 years ago and make this amazing connection with a partner nation leader? And tell me a little bit about what that connection was like and how that enduring partnership has impacted you on a personal level. That is meaningful, but that's not the kind of speeches that I would hear. And that really disappointed me. So I think that building that credibility means being authentically yourself and showing up to really give of yourself to that particular event. And I think that everything that you've created, Neil, contributes to that. Tell me a little bit about how it's been with the Leadership Connect platform in the last 2 years since we talked. Like, has it grown? Like, what are some of the initiatives that you've created there?
Well, we've brought on more speakers. I think when we last spoke, it was me. It was a platform for videos I'd made. We've got, I don't know the numbers, but we've probably got 40 other speakers on there. We've also got, I mean, your podcast is on there, obviously, but we've got, I think 10 podcasters on there with leadership related podcasts. There's also a personality assess, like a very basic psychometric based on the Merrill Reed social style. So we use it to support courses. So when people do the courses I described, the physical courses where they come away with us, and the course is accredited by the Institute of Leadership, and it's quite intense. But we also give them access to the platform for a year so they can watch anything they didn't get. So if I explain something and it kind of maybe goes over their head because I wasn't on form that day, they can look and see a video of hopefully me on a day I explained it better. But they can share that with their teams as well. So it's like, oh yeah, that bit of team theory, I like that. Can't really remember it, but I can find it and I can share it with people. So it creates a really good foundation for the course, or kind of like a thread through the course. And then we've got individual users as well. And we're just in the 4th reiteration of the platform. So a new version of it goes live at some point this week. It should be live by Friday. You've got the version that's online right now, looks similar, but it will look a lot better in 2 or 3 days. And I'm constantly trying to improve the user experience so it's smoother. I like things simple. I like us to do like with the leadership theory, I like us to do the work and the thinking. So then if you come on it, it works beautifully. So that's the next stage. And then when it's live, we'll start pushing it again. But we've probably got, I mean, it's not Amazon or Google or anything
Sure.
like that. But I think we've got 600 users on it at the
That's
moment.
awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I think this is just a wonderful way to give back and be of service post military. And I think there's a lot of people who are watching
Yeah.
and who might not know what they want to do past being in the military. And going into the leadership space, I think is a wonderful option. I mean, Oak went down the road of writing a book and doing public speaking engagements. You created your book, but then you also created a team that goes out and teaches leadership and does these interactive and in-person seminars. And I think that there's so much potential within people who have served in the military to be able to take the experiences that they had while serving and use that. Like you said, I love what you said about how you created the course that you wish you would have had. That's really powerful.
Yeah. And I think also we are different from people get their understanding of what military leadership is from films, really, from like Full Metal Jacket or whatever.
Top Gun.
Yeah, so they think it's either all extreme glamour or shouting, officer and gentleman, that sort of thing, and they don't realize that it's not that at all. I mean, I always say the last person as an officer, you don't want to shout at your soldiers because they're armed. You don't upset. But we would never shout. I would never shout as a leader of a I led a Gurkha squadron in Iraq and would never shout. I mean, God, that would be a complete loss of control and would unsettle the whole organisation if I lost my temper. So I tried never to do it. And if ever I did, looking back now, I know I would have got that. I know I got that wrong.
Right.
But we are taught to lead really well because Staff College does that and Military Academy does that. And more importantly, experience does that. And you learn the basics of selection and maintenance of the aim and really spending time to get to know your staff, your team, which again, a lot of people outside the military don't know that. And I know that some people in the military do know it and still don't do it.
I agree.
But at the very least, we've all been taught it.
I think the two things that I feel are the most important things about leading, before you can have the good idea fairies and start to divvy out the tasks, like you said, you have to do a few things first. And I think number one, you have to get to know your team and you have to understand each person is driven by something different. Each person is motivated with something different. One person might want praise for their work, while another just wants to be empowered and be left alone and just be executed. A third person might want more hands-on and interactive coaching. And I think that's the number one. And then the number two thing is leading by example, showing that you can roll your sleeves up and occasionally jump in, or you are willing to jump in at your level. And I'll give you an example. My deputy commander at NATO, he had to do a media engagement, and it was a pretty high-profile one. I want to say it was either Reuters or Associated Press. It was one of the wire services. And we prepped him, and I did the media package, did all my research and everything. But I remember the day I went up to his office, we got together about a half hour prior. He went through my media read ahead. He was making notes. He printed out additional information. He was scribbling things. And then during the interview, he was bringing up things I hadn't even thought of and other research. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is like how it's supposed to go. And from that point forward, that guy had my respect because he didn't just take what I gave him and just read off of it like a piece of paper. No, he went through the time and the trouble to take what I did and go, okay, this is good, but I also need this, this, and this. And didn't come back to me and tell me to look up this, this, and this. He just did it.
No, that's lovely. And it sounds like he put his effort where it was needed. He worked out this really mattered and did it well.
It did. The engagement was wonderful. and we had a very good conversation with the reporter. And this was somebody that I think a lot of people, he was very intense, and a lot of people, and I've had this happen in my past where somebody who's very intense and very into their job,
Yeah.
I always tend to click with because I can match that intensity.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I respect it. And so, I really liked working with him. And I ended up doing a few trips with him later, after this point. And we just always got along. I got along great with his aides. And that's like the kind of leader that you want. You want some, yes, they can be intense, and yes, they're demanding, but I would take that any day over somebody that's not involved.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So.
Not involved, or doesn't, not involved is another way of saying doesn't really care, isn't it?
Right.
Not passionate about it, or is working for stuff that doesn't. It's that thing I said about stuff that's irrelevant. I'm really busy, but none of it's to do with the job.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's to do with my next promotion.
Right. And another issue that I see with a lot of senior leaders is they tend to have these ideas that are so sweeping and grand without understanding what their place is in the organization. I don't know if you've seen that, where they think they can go over what they have the ability to impact. And they just frustrate their staffs, because then their staffs try to work all these things, and they get, we had this happen at NATO too, where NATO HQ would be like, no, you guys can't do that. We get, you're motivated, Marcom, and we know you want to do it, but it's not really, you're not able to, because that's just not your role. And I think that frustrates leaders as well.
Well, you undermine your credibility quite quickly if you're giving speeches about all these great things you're going to change, and then it turns out you didn't clear your lines and you don't have the authority or the influence to achieve it. The next time you give a stirring speech, people are going to be a bit less convinced by you.
Yeah.
And I get the idea that, and again, I never made really senior rank, but I get the idea that when you do, you haven't got that much freedom. Not really. The things are pretty heavily boxed in terms of what you're allowed to do and standards that have to be achieved and the budget that's available. And actually over here, it's probably changing now, but over here it's been managing decline really in terms of numbers and equipment until probably now, where it looks like it might be turning around. That's really frustrating. You've got to be training to operate at divisional level, and there probably isn't a division over here that could be deployed.
Mm-hmm. And I've often said that I sadly it's going to take a major crisis, I think, to really put the military at the proper readiness levels that I think we need to operate. Public affairs, my designator, has just always been traditionally under-resourced and undermanned, but part of that too is because of the subjective nature of our craft. And the fact that it's not a hard science or a hard, fast rule what we devote our time to doing. And so it always depends on who we work for, what it is they want us to do and how they see our role. And I think that friction is inherent in a lot of people who are faced in an organization where they're not sure of what their role is. Can you talk a little bit about how you define what right looks like the end state of where somebody wants to lead?
I'm not sure. I might be answering the wrong thing here. So if I'm off track, then just pull me back. But I think that alignment's really important. So oh, can you hear my dogs howling? I don't know whether that will make it across.
I barely.
That's because there's a police siren somewhere.
Oh.
They can pick up police or ambulance sirens, and then they join in. They go.
I can hear it. I can very faintly.
They go to the back gate and they howl like they're Labradors, but they howl like wolves. It's ridiculous.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I think alignment is really important. I think that the most senior leader in an organization has to select and maintain the aim in military doctrine terms, but has to be really clear what they're trying to achieve. But then that absolutely must flow down in that all activity, the level below, must slot in to what the boss is trying to achieve. And the same goes all the way down the pyramid. So everybody in the organization's activity ultimately is contributing to what the top leader has said this organization is trying to achieve. You very rarely get that. You very rarely get that. You get people just doing what they've always done, staying in little islands of relevant but not highly relevant activity. It's like, well, we do media operations, so that's what this looks like. Not, we do media operations in support of
this
that
intended effect.
Objective. Yeah. And it comes from lack of communication, laziness, a lack of dynamism of the top level leader. Because if you've set what the organization is trying to achieve, your next job is to make sure everyone knows what that is. Because having complex plans that nobody understands or sees, or that are just too boring to read, that's not going to have any dynamic effect. I mean, you have your effect by going and, well, ideally speaking to people, and that's where you don't give the dull, uncontroversial chat GPT speech. You give the speech that says, this is the thing we're trying to achieve. But
right.
I think it's very easy as a leader, if you're leading something of your own, or you really care, if you really care about what you're trying to achieve, makes you energetic and passionate. If you're doing something boring, or you're just trying not to get sacked, you're just trying to keep your head down, it makes you very uninspiring. And all sorts of, and you end up fighting, I'm using cliches here, but you end up chasing errors, fighting fires. Your stuff goes wrong because people aren't energized and passionate going in this direction, so they go all over the place and they do things that get you into trouble.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. I think that is so spot on. And I think that a lot of this is understanding yourself and understanding that maybe the military is not for you, or maybe the organization that you're in is not for you. And knowing when to pivot and when to make a change to something that you're passionate about. Because once you're passionate, like I'm passionate about this podcast, it's very obvious that I'm passionate about this podcast. It's very obvious I'm passionate about online communications and respectful decorum and ways to debate issues in a way that isn't divisive or isn't that drives home a point, but then at the same time, and is thought-provoking, but also doesn't alienate people or conduct personal attacks. I'm very passionate about that. And that makes me I would like to think, an effective podcaster, because I'm able to do that. Now, if I didn't love what I was doing, the conversations I don't think would be the same. And it's the same thing with leader. You can tell when someone's not into it. And when they're just checking a block. And I've had that happen too, where I've worked with people who I could just tell were uninspired and didn't want to continue on. And that's also where, that's a great point too, Neil, is that you've got to know when to leave, when to walk away.
Yeah, I'm reading. I've gone through a little phase of reading about a particular adventurer and World War II officer who's a guy called Freddie Spencer Chapman. But he wrote a book called The Jungle is Neutral, which is really well known. It's, I think, required reading in lots of organizations, but I know the US Marine Corps, a lot of people I know from there have read it, so I think they get told to read it at some stage. But he is a World War II officer, but before World War II, he was a major adventurer. He crossed Greenland. He was only the second person, or the second expedition he led to cross Greenland. The first was by a guy called Nansen, and then he climbed a top 8 peak. I can't remember which, but in Tibet, I think, with almost no planning. In the 1930s, he had a bit of leave, and he and a friend went up and with one porter climb this peak. So he was a major adventurer. And then in World War II, he got left behind. Well, he chose deliberately to push behind the Japanese lines in Malaya when Malaya and Singapore fell, and he carried out the most incredible guerrilla campaign, and then stayed on and lived in the jungle for 3.5 years. But he was really disparaging about regular officers, and this is really interesting because I was a regular officer. But he felt that regular officers lacked imagination and creativity and were too status conscious and career conscious. And I think he's onto something. And he then went to lead various schools. He worked for Kurt Hahn, who was a famous educationalist at Gordonstoun, but then went and set up a school in Germany post-war. And it was a truly comprehensive school. So it was designed so it would be a brilliant school, whatever your background, whether you could afford to go to an expensive school somewhere else or not. You'd have this wonderful realm of opportunity, which was to do with adventure and sport and thinking differently, and not much focus on the academic. But weirdly, they did really well academically. So I don't know, I've probably gone off track again here, but this kind of really creative, not being stuck in the rails. And I know I sometimes found I loved stuff about the army, and really sadly, I loved parades and things like that. I loved bagpipe music. I loved some of the culture.
Those are beautiful ceremonial aspects of serving. I still, to this day, when I hear the national anthem, I get choked up. Just because it's got such meaning throughout my life. In fact, I just went to a Memorial Day ceremony, and that was just deeply moving. And I think it's important to honor those things and to remember our heritage.
But then you've got to know what stuff is really important, what stuff is nice to have, and what stuff is less helpful, and where hierarchy and structure and tradition get in the way of being really good. And I think that's what his feeling was, that regular officers or regular soldiers were too constrained by this doctrine that had been put in. This is what we do, and this is what we don't do. And he was much more free thinking, and he's definitely. And I know with the education, he was onto something. And yet here we are years later, probably globally, with education being more and more formulaic. We'll teach you this, we'll teach you more of this, we'll make you better at maths, we'll make you focus more. And the move has been away from sport and away from travel and away from mind stretching activities and thinking, and to actually just being very, very good at fewer and fewer, more focused things.
And another thing that I think that leaders miss is the idea that in order to be an effective leader, you also have to be a calculated risk taker.
Yeah.
And that's what it sounds like he was. He knew how to break outside the box and do the things that others wouldn't do. And that's really what also builds your credibility as a leader. Now, are you going to win every risk that you take? No. You're going to fail, and you're going to fail a lot. Yeah. But I think that if you're not afraid to fail, and you're okay with sometimes you're not going to get it right, then you're showing your people that it's okay to break those molds and to step outside those lines and to try to do some of those things that are a little more daring that maybe others aren't doing. Because it's the only way you're going to press forward, and you're going to make your organization better. It's
hard to do again in the military, because if you've only got 2 or 3 meetings with the person who's writing your report, every meeting counts, and it drives people to play it safe. If you fail and your boss has only got 2 or 3 references on you to write a report on, and one of them's a failure. So we actually make it quite hard for people to be brave. And I think you're right. In business, you have to be making good decisions quickly, but also if every decision is no risk, you're not going to be moving forwards at all. And I mean, I know with Leader Cadet, we're constantly taking risk. And it's not, these aren't epic risks. None of them would quite sink the business. But I mean, I had a guy working in Libya for the last 18 months. You know, we go and do things that are slightly different to try and expand. The website has been a massive investment, the Leader Connect website, but it's played out well. The book, I've recorded my book on Audible. It's not should be live now, but it's going through the Amazon process. But again, I just think you have to keep trying stuff and doing new stuff.
Yeah, see what works.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I'm the same way with my podcast. I started the Instagram channel and only got about 30 likes. I wouldn't call it a failure yet. But it's because I haven't automated anything on it. And so now I'm going to start the S.O.S podcast on a Facebook group. I mean, not group, but page. And then now I've got to figure out a way, well, if I'm going to do that, then I've got to automate the blogs. I've got to automate the reels. And so I'm always just constantly, I had a media company, I still do, that I'm working with. Now I've brought in a virtual assistant. So I'm just gradually starting to scale up. I was talking to you before the call. I've now got to figure out a 3-camera setup. I've got I'm putting out some feelers for some people with some, higher tech podcast stuff. I mean, a lot of this is learning as I go, this business. I mean, this is such a new medium for media, and then incredibly new that the average citizen can break into. I mean, 5 years ago, I would say, no, maybe 10 years ago, nobody was podcasting. I mean, maybe the the Joe Rogans were podcasting, and that's about it. But now with all these tools, we have ways for people to do it, but you still need the skills. I mean, you still need the technical skills. You still need to understand how to package the stories up in a way that's saleable, that people will want to see. Not everyone's going to sit here and listen to an hour-long podcast. Some people are just going to want that little snippet of what you and I are talking about. And so you have to understand how to present your content in different ways. And I find all that fascinating. I love it. I think it's interesting.
You do it well. I mean, you do it well, but the fact that anyone can break into it, I've been a guest on, a lot over the years of podcasts, but one or two were just outright awful in the early days before I knew to ask a few questions. I just thought, someone wants me on a podcast. That's nice. and I had one where the guy he knew nothing about me. He knew absolutely nothing about me. And there's local television over here is absolutely disastrous, and I've learned not to do that, because again, it's just so low quality. This isn't like BBC local or ITV local. This is kind of a commercial thing, and I don't think anyone watches it. But anyone can break in and do a podcast, but 99 out of 100 won't do a good podcast. It's like you're saying, the passion and the hard work differentiate between someone knocking out rubbish that people will lose interest in and something that's actually got a bit of substance and content to it. And that's the bit where your background and professionalism, I think, makes the difference.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that hopefully that people can see, like we talked about earlier, I'm willing to take risks with my content. It's the whole reason I bring on whistleblowers, or I bring on people who are speaking up and speaking out on their organizations, because I want people to see that that's okay. Like, it is okay to sometimes say what needs to be fixed in a public setting. And so I feel that's very important. But as we're wrapping up the hour that just completely flew by, what were some... Yeah, I mean, every time I talk to you, Neil, it's like this. But what would you say are maybe 3 takeaways that we can incorporate within our daily lives? Not just leading an organization, but leading in our family, leading as a dog trainer, leading anywhere is leading.
Well, it always comes down to be really clear what you're trying to achieve. Take the time to engage other people, and that's really important, because leading isn't about being busier. It's about having a ripple effect through others, and this is what a lot of people get wrong. They think, I'm a leader, so I need to really show some self-sacrifice here, and you just see this leader burning themselves out in the corner, but having very little positive effect on others. So So that engaging with people is really important, and probably be yourself. Like be good with yourself. Most people are inherently decent until they're trying to be something that they're not, and then anything could come out. If you're behaving like you think a director should behave, or a captain should behave, or whatever, you're suddenly, there's this distortion between the right thing to do and what you think the right thing for this other type of character is. And if you're just yourself, and which implies a sort of a kindness and decency, you'll lead, well, people will want to work for you, and you'll lead so much better. And then maybe I should just say one other thing, which I'm breaking the rules of 3 points here, but the whole serve to lead is the motto of the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, where I went. And I think serve to lead is really important. Is the idea that you are leading as an act of service. And I've expanded on this quite a lot in the leadership book, that you're just a member of the team as the leader. You're not better than the other people in the team. You are just one. If you're the platoon commander and there's 30 other people in your platoon, you're not better than those 30, but your role is to lead those 30. So you have to be competent, or very highly competent at leadership, but you shouldn't believe your own legend. You're not there because you can't. And in any organization, if you genuinely believe you're the best person in your organization, and that you need to be the best at everything all the time, you're making a rod for your own back. You won't have the best brain unless you only select stupid people. You won't have the best brain. You won't be the most experienced. So understanding that as a leader, you're just another person, but make sure you're good at what you do, and you're there to look after the people you lead. You are leading and serving them. You care for them. You look after them. You nurture them. And if you ever are putting yourself first, and sometimes you've got to, because otherwise, again, you will burn out. But if you're ever putting yourself first, you need to think, why am I putting myself first? On this occasion, is it correct? And if you're doing it all the time, you're doing it wrong. If you never put yourself first, you're probably doing it wrong as well. You have to. And if you've built a lovely team, they'll look after you. They'll say, look, boss, you're looking knackered. Just we've got this.
Yes, they will. I love it. I mean, you also brought up that something I was even talking about with somebody this morning about, you can have all the great ideas in the world, but then when you let that power get to your head, it kills you. And there's people throughout history who were very, very good leaders and very effective. And then they, unfortunately, the ego and the power got in them. I constantly do the same thing. I do a gut check on myself. I mean, luckily I have a husband that has no problems calling me out whenever I'm not going down the right road. But thank you so much, Neil. You do. And you need that. You need people in your life that can call you on your shit and tell you when you need to look at this.
Teresa, I know we're up against that, but Tony, who works with me, who does all of the stuff with leader, all the podcast type stuff. He calls me all the time, like all the time. If I'm wrong, he and I have worked together in a previous military role through the cadet forces. But he tells me if I'm wrong, and I don't mind at all. And when he tells me that I'm wrong, he's almost always right, and it's so useful.
Oh yeah, I have friends like that. My one friend, Mary McNeil, she was my best friend in high school, and she's always like, Terry, because that's what I went by growing up. Terry, you're looking at this wrong. You're wrong. I recently had her do a buddy statement for the VA, and I wrote out what I thought she should say, and she's like, "This isn't right. This isn't what happened." And so she rewrote like the whole thing, made it better. Oh. And that's what you need. You need people who can do that. So I thank you so much. I just love talking to you, Neil. I feel like we'll be friends forever. And I just think that if you're ever in Mississippi, if you're ever in the Deep South, you need to stop by and pay us a visit, because it's just really great talking to you. And I hope more people go on the Leader Connect online tool, online training, in person. I don't know if you travel to the United States, but if you ever do, I know you have a friend here.
Thank you. I love the United States. I haven't been for years, but I've been to North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia. I spent ages on exercise out there. I love it. So
Nice.
hopefully I'll come again.
Awesome. Well, I will meet you backstage to say goodbye as I go full screen. But thank you again, Neil. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Teresa. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And I did see the question, the Fantastic Stories of Service podcast. Thank you, Mary Ballard, for the different. Really appreciate it. Love the point and also the difference on work produced when you're passionate about it. So yes, Mary had a quick comment here. I wanted to bring it in, but. Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate it. It's a morning podcast, so a little bit different. I'm a little bit chipper in the morning time, so it's kind of nice to do it during this period. I do have another show scheduled Thursday. Still working on the show promo and some of the information for that, but I'll have that out I'll have that out to you all soon. And as I always close these calls, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye now.